Hey kids, today we will discuss parametric surfaces. So let's do a quick recap from Math 22 that if you have a vector function r, either from r to r2 or from r to r3, then we can write it as this vector right here with two components, x of t and y of t if it's from r to r2, or in the case of r to r3, then we can write our functions as the vector with three components, x of t, y of t, and z of t. And these vector functions right here have their corresponding parametric equations. In the case of r to r2, we have x and y written as follows. And for the case of r to r3, then we have x, y, and z written as follows. And so we can talk about the collection of all points x, y, in R2 or x, y, z in R3 that satisfy these parametric equations right here. And the collection of all those points form what we call a parametric curve. As an example, if you have the vector r of t equals cosine t sine t comma t, where your t is from 0 to 2 pi, then what you get is a circular helix. Observe that in the x and y axis, you only have a circle parameterized as follows, cosine t and sine t. So there is a circular motion when we look at the xy plane. However, because of this z equals t right here, what happens is that our curve increases through time. So we still have a circular motion, but our circular motion goes up over time. That's why we get a circular helix here. This time around, we want to generalize the idea of parametric curves by introducing what we call a parametric surface. So in this case, the function that we are considering is a function r whose domain is r2 and whose codomain is r3. So we have r of uv here, signifying that we have two variables now, or two parameters. And we have three components for our vector, x, y, and z, all in terms of the parameters u and v. So the collection of all points x, y, z in R3 such that we have x equals x of uv, y equals y of uv, and z equals z of uv, as uv varies through its domain, is called a parametric surface. So how do we visualize this one? Take note, we have two variables, u and v. So we can consider the domain to be a region in the uv plane. For example, we have this rectangular region right here. Then using the vector function r of uv, we can think of r of uv as some sort of a transformation that deforms our UV plane into this parametric surface right here. So basically what we are doing is we are taking points in UV, then we consider the vector r of UV, and whatever point we get, that would be the point in our parametric surface. So let's try to dig a little bit deeper with this parametric surface. So observe that if u is held constant, then only v varies and vice versa. So for example, I can take the portion of the UV plane where u is constant. Let's say this one. And observe that within this line, the values of v changes. And similarly, if I take this line right here, where I hold v constant, then the value of u varies. We call these lines the u constant and the v constant. And what's happening here is that we are mapping these lines to R3 via the function r of uv that we have introduced a while ago. And so what we get here in this case, so remember, if you have a vector function in terms of just a single variable, the graph that we will get here is a curve in 3 space. And so if we map this constant u curves and constant v curves that we call or the constant lines u and v. Then what we get in the 3 space are the constant u curves and the constant v curves. And by varying these constants right here, when I say varying these constants, we're just considering different u lines here and different v lines. Then we will be able to generate the entire surface. So we can think of parametric surfaces as simply getting lines in the UV plane, then mapping it via the function r, and collecting all of those curves that we will get. So once we do that, we will be able to generate the entire surface. This one right here, these boxes in the middle, we can think of them as patches of the surface, and usually this is used in computer imaging, no? For example, if you want to generate a 3D image, then you can start with this u and v lines, and using a transformation, you get a line in the 3 space. That's why usually when you're doing computer imaging, you get some sort of grids or meshes within your 3D image. So let's have an example. Let's consider the paraboloid z equals 4 minus x squared minus y squared. Similar to your parametric curves, there are multiple ways to parameterize your paraboloid. And one of the simplest ways to do this is just fix x and y to be equal to u and v respectively. And if you do that, you get the parametric equations: x equals u, y equals v, then z here becomes 4 minus x becomes u, so u squared, minus y becomes v, so you have v squared. So here I have 4 minus u squared minus v squared. Another way is to consider, let's say, the parameters r and theta. So I can let x supposed to be r cosine theta and y equals r sine theta. Here I'll just put the restriction that r is greater than or equal to 0 and theta is in between 0 and 2 pi. Why is this a good parameterization? Observe that we can write z as 4 minus x squared plus y squared. But x squared plus y squared is simply r squared cosine squared theta plus r squared sine squared theta, and in the end we just get 4 minus r squared here. So see that your z is simply dependent on the parameter r. So we can put here r cosine theta, y equals r sine theta, and z equals 4 minus r squared. And what do we see if we consider these two different parameterizations? Well, you get the paraboloid still, but our patches or our constant u curves and v curves look different from each other. For example, in the case of the uv parametrization, we can think of it as having hyperbolas in the uv plane. So I get some hyperbolas here. Then what I do is I fold this uv plane to form this paraboloid right here. That's why you see that the lines here form one side of the hyperbola. This one right here as well. Whereas, if we consider the x equals r cosine theta and y equals r sine theta, then what happens here is that we have the r theta plane, so we have our polar plane. So our lines here look like this. And if you fold this plane to form this paraboloid, what you'll get here are these lines right here. So this line right here is mapped to this line right here. And one good thing about this parametrization, the r theta parametrization, is that it is easier to get portions of the paraboloid. For example, if I want to get 3/4 of the paraboloid, then I can just do this one where I set theta to be in between pi over 4 and 2 pi. So what happens here is that the portion where theta is 0 to pi over 4 gets removed. I just get 3/4 of my paraboloid. Then I can also cut my paraboloid. For example, what if I don't want the top portion? Then maybe I can just set r to be somewhere in between 1 and 2, but theta to be in between 0 to 2 pi. So because theta is in between 0 to 2 pi, I'll get the entire circle. Although I am only considering circles with radius in between 1 and 2. So I get the circle with radius 1, then generate all circles until I reach the circle with radius 2. And so I get that portion of the paraboloid. So usually in imaging, although there are many parametrizations, you are interested in a parametrization where you get the certain image that you want. So for example, if you want this one or this one, then the UV parametrization is not useful. Maybe it's better if you consider the r theta parametrization of our paraboloid. So let's have another example. This time we have a parametrization. Then let's just determine what would be the equation in Cartesian form. So when we say Cartesian form, we just want an equation in terms of the variables x, y, and z. So how do we approach this one? Observe that for x and y, I have sine theta to be similar to them. Then I have cosine theta and sine theta right here. So it's sort of similar to r cosine theta and r sine theta, where r in this case is sine of phi. So what I'll do here is I'll get x squared plus y squared. So if I do that, I get sine squared phi cosine squared theta plus sine squared phi times sine squared theta. And since we have a common factor here, that sine squared phi, I can factor it out. Then I'm left with cosine squared theta plus sine squared theta. And this one is just equal to 1. So I end up with sine squared phi here. Then finally, observe that I have cosine phi here. And if I take the square of this one, I get cosine squared phi. And furthermore, if I add this cosine squared phi to sine squared phi, I'll just get 1. So let me do that right here. I have x squared plus y squared plus z squared equals sine squared phi plus cosine squared phi, and I end up with 1. And so the equation of the surface is given by x squared plus y squared plus z squared equals 1. So you see, we just obtained the unit sphere using this parametrization in terms of the angle theta and phi. And actually, what happens here is that maybe we can start with the case where z equals 0. So in the case where z equals 0, we can talk about what happens in the xy plane. So let's say you have the xy plane here, then you have your z-axis. So if z equals 0, then you get a specific value for theta. No? So if z equals 0, you get here, you get phi equals pi over 2. So this one right here would be fixed values, no? you'll just get pi over 2 here. And so what happens here is that you just get the set of all points where cosine theta and you just get the set of all points by varying your value of theta here. So for example, I get this circle right here. Sorry, I'm not good at drawing, so maybe I can do this. Yeah. Okay. Then now, what happens is that as we change, the value of phi will get a different value of z. So for example, if phi equals 0, then I get z equals 1. And if phi equals 0, what I'll just get here is that sine of phi equals 0. Then sine of phi equals 0. So I get x equals 0 and y equals 0. So at z equals 1, I'll just get this point right here. And similarly, if I take phi equals pi, if phi equals pi, then z equals -1, then y becomes 0 and x equals 0 as well. So if I go get the point at z equals 1, I just get 0, 0. I get the bottom of my sphere. So what are the roles of theta and phi here? Theta here is to generate. So this one generates the circle given a specific value of phi. Whereas phi here generates the sphere in such a way that this one dictates the specific z value, where we draw a circle. So in short, theta here is an angle in the xy plane. It's an angle in the xy plane, whereas phi is an angle in the xz or in the yz plane. In order for you to generate several circles that intersect the z-axis. Okay? Later on, we will discuss this parametrization in more detail, and we will see how this one is useful in obtaining volumes of solids. But for now, it's nice that we know this parametrization. Observe a while ago that using parametrizations, we are able to obtain surfaces of revolution. For example, this sphere right here is simply obtained by revolving a certain circle. And so, we want to extend the idea of revolving surfaces using parametric equations. So let's start with the base case where you have the curve y equals f of x, and you want to revolve or rotate the curve y equals f of x about the x-axis. Then we make this relationship right here, the set of parametric equations, x equals x, so we are holding x constant. Then we have y equals f of x cosine theta and z equals f of x sine theta. So how do we get that relationship right here? Suppose this is your y equals f of x. This one right here. So this is y equals f of x. And then what we can do is we can rotate this one. So for example, I'll rotate this line right here by an angle of theta, therefore getting this line right here. So this one right now is my y equals f of x rotated. Observe that I can talk about this distance right here given a certain point x up to this portion right here. I know that this distance right here would just be f of x. And similarly, this distance right here is also f of x, but in particular, the distance from this one to this one is just dictated by the y-axis. So I can let y to be equal to this distance right here. And finally, the height of this triangle is just a projection within the z-axis. And so we can just let this one to be the variable z. Observe that x here is fixed. That's why we have x equals x. Then to get y, we have the relationship that so if this is y, then we have cosine theta equals y over f of x. Finally giving me y equals f of x cosine theta. Then finally for the case of z, then we have sine theta equals z over f of x, giving me z equals f of x sine theta. That's why we have this relationship right here. Then similarly, we can also consider the cases where we rotate the curve x equals f of y about the y-axis and y equals f of z about the z-axis. Then we get the following relationships right here. And the way we obtain that one is similar to this one. We will find the triangle relationship between x, y, and z. So you have these two circles right here. I think it's a good exercise if you try to visualize it using a diagram like this one. But in any case, we have these two relationships right here for the y-axis revolution and z-axis revolution. So let's have some examples. This time, we try to find parametric equations for the surface generated by revolving the curve y equals 1 over x about the x-axis. So here, we are given y equals f of x about the x-axis. So we make use of this relationship right here. So we fix x. Then we let y to be equal to f of x times cosine theta. So we have 1 over x cosine theta. Then finally, we have z to be equal to 1 over x sine theta. So as long as you know these relationships, then it's pretty much straightforward, no? You just need your function f defining the curve that you are revolving. Another example, this time, let's parameterize the hyperboloid of one sheet, x squared minus y squared over 4 plus z squared equals 1. For this one, we do not have the function that we are interested with. So, how do we deal with this one? Observe that I have a parabola, or hyperbola, I mean, in the, what plane is this? XY plane. So I have this hyperbola in the XY plane. And observe that for me to generate this hyperboloid of one sheet, I just revolve this hyperbola along the y-axis. So observe that the hyperboloid rather is obtained by revolving the hyperbola. So it's the black one right there about the y-axis. So maybe we can just get the equation of this one. So first, obtain the equation of the hyperbola. But this hyperbola right here, it lies in the xy plane. And in particular, we have the equation z equals 0 for xy plane. So this one right here, it's just the trace of the hyperboloid on the plane z equals 0. So we just equate this one to z equals 0. So this is the trace on z equals 0. So we just replace z with 0. I get x squared minus y squared over 4 equals 1. And this one right here would be my generating curve. So this one is the curve that generates my surface of revolution. So now, we are revolving about the y-axis. And if we are revolving about the y-axis, we need an equation of the form x equals f of y. So, what we need is x equals f of y. So we just solve for x right here. So I get x squared equals 1 plus y squared over 4. Then obtaining the square root of both sides, I get x equals plus minus square root of 1 plus y squared over 4. So now the question is, what x value will we take? Would it be the positive 1 or would it be the negative 1? Observe that there is a symmetry right here. These two are symmetric graphs, and because of that, I can just take one of them, and if I revolve one of them by 360 degrees, I will still be able to generate the entire curve. So by symmetry, I can just take one of them. Let's say x equals the square root of 1 plus y squared over 4. So here, x equals negative square root of 1 plus y squared over 4 is also okay, no? But, yeah, I just take this one. So now, we can make use of this relationship right here for the case of x equals f of y about the y-axis. So my parametrization, parametrization of the hyperboloid is, so first we have x equals f of y cosine theta. So x equals square root of 1 plus y squared over 4 cosine theta. Second is we fix y. Then third is z equals the square root of 1 plus y squared over 4 sine theta. Okay? So it's pretty easy, no? We just need to identify, in this case, if we are given the Cartesian equation of our surface, you just need to identify the appropriate generating curve and the appropriate axis of revolution. Once you have that one, you can write the generating curve using the required form. And from there, you can use the relationship that we obtained a while ago. Okay? So now, we proceed to obtaining partial derivatives of vector-valued functions. So before, recall that if you have a vector r from the set of real numbers to, let's say, r3. So in this case, we have r of t equals x of t, y of t, z of t, then we can obtain r prime of t simply by obtaining the derivative of each of our components. But now, what we have is a function in terms of two parameters u and v, where u and v is mapped to this vector right here. So the question is, how would we obtain the derivative of this vector valued function r? Now, because we have two variables, what we have here are partial derivatives with respect to the parameters u and v. So we define the partial derivatives of r with respect to u and v, and we denote it similarly from the case that we have from functions of several variables. So we have ru and rv. It's just similar to fx and fy, and it's given by this limit right here. So once again, if you just want to obtain the derivative with respect to u, then you perturb u by a small value delta u, then obtain this quotient right here. So this is still the slope of the secant line, no? This is analogous to this one. And you just let delta u approach 0. Whereas if you have the partial with respect to v, then the perturbation would be in the v coordinate, no? So you still have the same slope idea, and you let delta v, or the perturbation, approach 0. And because of the parallels with the definition of partial derivatives of vector valued functions and the partial derivatives of your regular multivariable functions, then we can make this remark right here. So if the partials of x, y, and z exist, then the partial of r with respect to u is just the same as obtaining the partial of each component, and same with v. The partial of r with respect to v is just the same as obtaining the partial with respect to v of each of the components. So it's very similar to your Math 22, where you just get the derivative of each component. But this time around, since you have two variables, what you have are partial derivatives with respect to your variables. So as an example, suppose you have r of uv to be equal to the vector uv, u comma v squared. Find the partial of r with respect to u and with respect to v. The graph of this vector valued function right here is called witness umbrella, and one interesting property of the surface is that it intersects itself. So see that the surface intersects around this area right here. So let's obtain ru and rv. So the derivative of r with respect to u would just be the partial of each of these guys with respect to u. So the partial of this one with respect to u is just v. Partial of u with respect to u is 1, and the partial of v squared with respect to u, since this is a constant with respect to u, the derivative of this one is 0. Then for rv, so we just obtain the partial of each of these guys with respect to v. This, okay. So the partial of uv with respect to v is u. The partial of u with respect to v, so u is a constant in terms of v, so that's 0. Then the partial of v squared with respect to v is just 2v. So it's pretty simple. What we have done in partial derivatives, you just do it 3 times, no? So since we are obtaining here partial derivatives, we're also able to talk about tangent planes to your parametric surfaces. how do we approach this one? Take note that this parametric surface, let's say it's the surface sigma, it is the graph of the vector valued function r of uv. And suppose we are interested at the tangent plane at the point x0, y0, z0, where u0 and v0 corresponds to this function right here. So for example, if I have r of u0, v0, then I just get the point x0, y0, z0 corresponding to u0 and v0 right here. So based on definition, we know that Ru is the partial with respect to the variable u. And so, if we consider a curve of sigma, let's say a constant u curve, this one right here, then what I know is that, it's this one. Then what I know is that the partial of r with respect to u is tangent to this u curve right here. Then similarly, the partial of r with respect to v is tangent to this constant v curve right here. And so, what kind of relationship can we draw with partial of r with respect to u and partial of r with respect to v? What we know is that in the uv plane, so this is the u, this is the v. What we know is that the u curve or the u lines and the v lines, they are perpendicular to each other. And so there is some sort of orthogonality between these two vectors right here. So partial of r with respect to v and partial of r with respect to u are perpendicular to each other. And in particular, we can say that they lie on the plane. They are vectors in the tangent plane. And since they are vectors in the tangent plane, what conclusion can I draw from them? So if these are two vectors in a tangent plane, recall that two intersecting vectors will give you the normal vector of your plane. And for you to get the normal vector of the plane, you just get the cross product of these two right here. And their cross product is given by this one, the partial of r with respect to u, cross product partial of r with respect to v. And this one serves as the normal vector to the surface and to the tangent plane as well. So we define the principal normal vector of the surface, and that's simply the vector n given by the partial derivative of r with respect to u cross the partial derivative of r with respect to v. So we go back to our example a while ago. If I have the vector function r of uv, let's try to find an equation of the tangent plane to the surface defined by that r of uv, where u equals 2 and v equals -1. Okay. So, a while ago, we computed for Ru and Rv. So, Ru from a while ago is... What is Ru again? I think it's V10. So, I have V10 and Rv equals U02V. And so, I can just get the specific Ru at the point 2, -1 and Rv at the point 2, -1. Okay, so that's -1, 1, 0 and 2, 0, -2. So what I'll do here is that I'll get their cross product. So the vector n would be equal to Ru of 2, negative 1 cross RV of 2, comma, negative 1. And if you remember, this is the quote-unquote determinant. So why do we have this quotation right here? Recall that for a determinant, the entries of your matrix should come from the same set. However, the matrix, quote-unquote, that we are considering here has I hat, j hat, and k hat as its first row. So this one right here are vectors in R3. But our second and third rows are the vectors negative 1, 1, 0 and 2, 0, negative 2. So what we have right here are entries from R. This one are entries for R3. So technically, this is not the matrix that you are used to having. And so this is just a quote-unquote determinant. It behaves similarly to your determinant, but it's not really a determinant, strictly speaking, no? So to get this one, we just get the cofactor expansion along the I hat, j hat, k hat. So we have here I hat multiplied by the determinant of this matrix right here. So that's 1 times negative 2. So we have negative 2. Then minus j hat times. So we get the determinant of this matrix right here. So I get negative 1 times negative 2. That's 2 minus 0 times 2. So 2 minus 0, I get 2. Then plus k hat times. So this is k hat. I delete these 2. I'll get the determinant of this one. So I have 0 minus 2 times 1 is 2. So I get negative 2 here, no? 0 minus 2. Which in vector notation, this is negative 2, comma, you have negative here times this 2. So I have negative 2, then times negative 2. So now, we have the normal vector. The normal vector n equals negative 2, negative 2, negative 2. And what I need now is the point. So what I need is a point xyz, or x naught, y naught, z naught, I guess. However, what I am given is uv to be equal to 2 comma negative 1. So what I need to do is to find x naught, y naught, z naught corresponding to this uv value. And for me to get that one, what I'll just get is what I just need to do is obtain the entries or the components of r of 2 comma negative 1. And whatever those components are, I'll just write it in a point form. So what I'll just do here is I'll consider r of 2 comma negative 1. So what's r of 2 comma negative 1? That's 2 times negative 1 comma 2 comma negative 1 squared. So that's negative 2 comma 2 comma 1. And so from here, the point xyz or x naught, y naught, z naught corresponding to uv equals 2 negative 1 is the point negative 2 to 1. So finally, I have the point x naught, y naught, z naught, and I have the vector n. So now we can construct the equation using the point normal form. So I have this entry right here, -2 times x minus x naught. So that's x plus 2. Then plus b. So b is this one right here. So I have -2 times y minus y naught. So that's y minus 2. Then plus c. My c is -2. So -2 times z minus 1 equals 0. Okay. So right now, how many forms of equations of tangent plane do we have? So we have 3 already, no? Let me summarize this one. So equations of tangent planes. So the first one that we encountered is, so we have a given function, given point, then equation. So before, the first case is that we are given z equals f of xy, and we're given the point x naught, y naught. Then the equation is z minus z naught equals fx at x naught, y naught times x minus x naught plus fy at x naught, y naught times y minus y naught, where here z naught is simply f of x naught, y naught. The second case that we encountered is given the equation f of xyz equals 0, and suppose you have the point x naught, y naught, z naught. Then the equation of your tangent plane is fx at x naught, y naught, z naught times x minus x naught, then plus fy of x naught, y naught, z naught times y minus y naught plus fz of x naught, y naught, z naught times z minus z naught equals 0. So here the intricacy is that z is written implicitly in terms of x and y. That's why we cannot use number 1 here. So we rely on the fact that the gradient of f is normal to the surface given by this equation right here. Then finally, for the third one, we have now the r of uv equals x of uv, y of uv. So maybe I don't write it anymore. So here I am given a vector r of uv, and I am given the point uv. Then to get the equation, first what I need, so I need first ru cross rv. Let me name this vector abc at the point uv. And furthermore, I need the point x naught, y naught, z naught corresponding to the given uv. Then the equation of my tangent plane is a times x minus x naught plus b times y minus y naught plus c times z minus z naught equals 0. So these are the 3 equations of tangent plane that we have so far. For you to be able to determine which of the following equations to use, you just need to be familiar with whatever function is given and what kind of point is given. Okay? So let's have one more example. I think this is the last one. Find a vector equation for the normal line to the surface S defined by the vector function r of uv at the point 1, 4, 3. So first, let's recall what a normal line is. Recall that given a normal vector n, to the surface S, or in particular to the tangent plane at the point x0, y0, z0, at the point x0, y0, z0, then the normal line is given by the vector. So let's say the normal vector n is ABC. Then the vector of the normal line is given by x0 plus at, y0 plus bt, z0 plus ct. So what is given to us so far? We are given the vector function r of uv, and we're also given the point 1, 4, 3, which is the x0, y0, z0. So our problem here is that for us to obtain n, so our primary need here is n, but n is the cross product of ru and rv. But to obtain ru and rv, I need a specific value for u and v. But I am given x0, y0, z0 here. So I need the specific value of uv corresponding to this one right here. So let's start with that one. So we can do a reverse process. Let's consider the vector 1, 4, 3 and obtain the corresponding u and v that would give us this vector 1, 4, 3. So first, using r of uv, find uv corresponding to the vector 1, 4, 3. So what we'll just do here is consider the system u squared. We want this to be equal to 1. V squared, this is the second component, so we want it to be equal to this one right here, 4. Then finally, u plus v equals 3. So we want u plus v to be equal to 3. Then from here, I can easily obtain u and v. So here I obtain u equals plus minus 1 and v equals plus minus 2. So now I need a specific combination of u and v that will give me u plus v equals 3. And there's only one possible combination here. If I take u equals 1 and v equals 2, I get 3. So therefore, the uv that we want is the point 1, 2. So now that we have the point 1, 2, we can finally proceed to finding ru and uv. So first, ru is just the derivative with respect to u, so that's 2u, comma the derivative of v squared with respect to u is 0. Then the derivative of u plus v with respect to u is 1. And we have rv to be equal to, so derivative of u squared with respect to v is 0. Derivative of v squared with respect to v is 2v. Then derivative of u plus v with respect to v is 1. And in particular, evaluating this one to the point, what have we obtained a while ago? 1, 2. Evaluating this one at the point 1, 2. Then I get, so u is 1. So I have 2, 0, 1. And 0, comma, v is 2. So 4. Yeah. 0, 4, 1. So thus, n is equal to Ru of 1, 2 cross Rv of 1, 2. So that's 2, 0, 1 cross 0, 4, 1. And this one, so let's just do the cofactor expansion again. So it's the quote-unquote determinant of this quote-unquote matrix I hat, j hat, k hat, 2, 0, 1, 0, 4, 1. So what we have here is I hat times the determinant of this one. So it's 0 minus 1 times 4 is negative 4. So we have negative 4 here. Then minus j hat times, so determinant of 2, 1, 0, 1. So it's this one, 2 times this one is 0. 2 minus this one is 0, their product. So we get 2 minus 0 is 2. Then finally, plus k hat times, so if k hat, we get the submatrix. So the product of this is 8. Then minus 0, I get 8. And so my normal vector becomes negative 4, comma, so you have negative times 2, negative 2, comma, 8. And hence, since we have x, y, x naught, y naught, z naught here, and your ABC, the normal vector, hence the vector equation of the normal line is given by, so x naught, so you have 1 plus 8 times t, so that's 1 minus 4t, comma, b plus y naught plus bt, so that's 4 minus 2t, then comma, z naught plus ct, so we have 3 plus 8t. Okay, so that's it for parametric surfaces. The next portion of Unit 2 would already deal with multivariable integration. So we will start first with double integrals, then eventually as we go on through this course, we will look at triple integrals. So thank you everyone and keep safe.